What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Survivor Now podcast. As always, my name is Randy. I'll be kind of your host this evening, but I got to introduce this guy, I guess, over here. I have to introduce this guy right here. Tonight, I am joined by Chris from the Nullified Take, and this has been a long time in the making. Unfortunately, it's under some sad circumstances, and we will get to that in a minute. But, Chris, how are you doing today, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. The intro music really got me pumped, and I feel like I need to up my game when it comes to the intro music, man. But obviously, I'm doing good under the circumstances. Survivor South Africa, no more. That is the news that we're hearing, at least online. So I know that there's a lot happening behind the scenes. I know you're following this up, and then I'm obviously trying to fly the flag high for South Africa, being from South Africa originally myself. It's a bit of a sad week, but I've also known that this news has been floating around, I feel like, for at least 6-7 months, that there were people that knew something was up.
Well, it was kind of hard to not think that something was going on because I remember we had Dino on the show, and I asked Dino towards the end of the episode, Dino, what's the news on Survivor South Africa, right? We haven't heard anything. At this point last year, we were having Survivor South Africa Return of the Outcast, which just put it out there for everyone. That was my first season ever watching Survivor South Africa. Like, what a way to come in, right? So I was like, is there any news you could give us for when the next season is? And Dino kind of just said, I have nothing. I know maybe a little bit more than you, but right now I don't have any knowledge. So at that moment, I was kind of getting worried. You say that this has kind of been a rumor floating around. How long have you had an inkling that this possibly could be heading the way of being canceled?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough. So Return of the Outcasts was my second season covering. I started with Immunity Island, which up until now, I don't know if it is a thing when you cover a season, it automatically becomes your favorite season because you're just invested in a different level. So Immunity Island for me is my favorite season of Survivor South Africa, but I've watched pretty much all of the seasons up until now. And we had a finale, I guess, viewing party in Cape Town, which was straight after Return of the Outcasts. I was fortunate enough to meet a lot of the players face to face, obviously do the meet and greet, take the photos. And I had a lunch with Leru Botha. And talking to Leru Botha, I could pick up something was up. He didn't tell me exactly what was going on, but, I feel like he saw the axe coming. The thing that sort of stood out for me and that was very disappointing was that it sounded like Mnet didn't even give them viewership rating numbers. Leru was in the dark as much as anybody else. And I don't know how you can run a show or be the executive producer of a show without knowing how you're doing in the viewership numbers. So that was a comment he made back then. I've already let people know about that, even on my podcast, which I found strange at the time. And you could tell something was up. Even back then, you could tell that there was no certainty for the next season, which was disappointing because I thought we had a really good season.
No, I enjoyed it. And like you said, sometimes when you're covering a season for the first time, it just hits a little bit different. Survivor South Africa is something that I had always heard about. And I had so many people in the Survivor community saying, Randy, like if you're going to be watching and covering Survivor, you have to check out South Africa. And I think what really drew me to the show is I like to say, outwit, outplay, outlast. And this is just kind of how I view everything. I feel like the three main versions of Survivor US, Survivor Australia, Survivor South Africa, they all kind of fit that mold in their own way. For me, Survivor US is kind of outlast because they give you nothing and you are literally starving, even though it's a shorter game. I feel like Survivor Australia is outplay because of how physical it is. It is so demanding. Where I feel like Survivor South Africa is the outwit portion. I feel like just the social game of the players were so good throughout the season. I thought the twists were so good. So that's kind of how I viewed it after covering Return of the Outcast. I'm like, man, I can see it's just crazy that the greatest game in the world can be played all over the world in so many different ways. Like none of the survivors are the same. Before we get, they all feel different. And that's insane to me to think that it's the exact same show, pretty much the same format. They all have
and here's a question
and stuff.
Sorry, I know it's your show.
You're good. Take over, man.
There's stuff you got to learn about me. I'm curious, when it comes to this type of stuff. And we had the whole thing on Paramount Plus for a little bit where Survivor South Africa made it onto Paramount. Finally, the US audiences could watch it in a legal manner, which is what a lot of people want to do. And I think a franchise, the smaller Survivor South Africa, really needs that global audience to continue to push for its survival or revival, as we'd like to call it.
Yes.
And you had Australian Survivor on there for a little bit as well. Do you think there is a space for all three shows to coexist in the US? Do you feel like that could happen? Because a lot of the theory or fan theory out there is that maybe Jeff felt a little bit under pressure because his show has been struggling, let's be honest, in the last 4 seasons. And people were raving about Australian Survivor. They were raving about Survivor South Africa, and suddenly it just got removed.
So I can say from my experience going to Survivor watch parties here in the US and speaking with like super fans, like people even, I'll just put it out there, people who are bigger super fans than me. I will say there are still like 6 or 7 US seasons I haven't seen. And that's crazy to me that I haven't watched them. And you're talking about people who have watched like every season like 3-4 times over. So I talked to them about Survivor. Absolutely love Survivor South Africa and Australia. Like these people could talk about it for days and how those versions of the show take it back to what we remember Survivor US being in those kind of early seasons. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that statement, how yes, like season 44 was really entertaining. The cast was great, but the last 4 seasons, we can all say Survivor US has not been the same. And we have been begging for them to bring back some iconic moments. We get those iconic moments with Survivor, basically the international versions of the show. So I know people over here love it. And 1,000%, I think it's got to be CBS and Jeff. I don't know how much Jeff is in on it, but CBS and Jeff.
Let's be honest.
Feeling pressure.
Jeff
Jeff
is
the
in on
producer of the
everything.
show. They have to be feeling pressured because I just think about it. You watch the international versions of the show. It's better. I mean, I'll put it out there. It is better than Survivor US right now by far.
And it hurts me. It hurts me because, when you talk about Survivor, I've got a few years on you. I was about 10 or something when it started. And I remember my very first episode was...
You look good, man. Let me just put that out there. You look good.
Thanks, man. Thanks. I'll take it, man. I'll take it. It's... what can I say? It's that South African genes, but...
Sorry to interrupt you. I just had to say that.
I'll take it. No, but listen, I watched it pretty much. I think it was like 10 or something when the first one aired. And I remember watching the merge episode of Borneo and then following it throughout. Like I've pretty much watched it ever since. There's a few seasons I've watched twice, but similar to you, I don't know how people watch it 3 or 4 times because, that's some different level of dedication to the franchise that even I don't have. But looking back at the early days, like Survivor is a juggernaut and it's such a great show. And I think International Survivor and specifically Survivor South Africa is a love letter to Survivor US, actually. It shouldn't be seen as something that competes with the main show. It should be something that complements it already. And I have a worry in my mind about Jeff and the US franchise and the whole, that he kind of feels like Survivor is his thing and that is what he does. And that when he retires, he's going to retire Survivor with him. And I think the fact that he sort of brings other franchises potentially down by not showing or not allowing for it to be on the platforms like Paramount Plus and things like that is really a sign that he does not want Survivor to be known for anything else than Jeff Probst being on Survivor. I love Jeff Probst. I mean, listen, I've seen this guy for many,
I sometimes
many years.
love Jeff Probst.
Yeah, but at the moment, I'm not the biggest fan of the direction he's taking in it. I'm not the biggest fan of the fact that he doesn't listen to fans and things like that. And this is another thing. We spoke about the challenge before we just started the live, and you mentioned you haven't watched the challenge. This is where the challenge is doing things better. Like the challenge is actually eating Survivor's lunch right now. And what they're doing is that they're creating this global franchise where they're actually pushing money and budget, because we know that Leru Buta has 1/10 of the budget that the US show has. But the main show of MTV is pushing money into the Challenge Australia, into the Challenge UK. They're behind the scenes helping these smaller franchises lift themselves up from the dirt to become something. And then they're creating a global showpiece like the Challenge World Championship, where the best of Australia, the best of the UK, the best of Argentina, and the best of the US, and the best of the MTV show takes each other on. Those are all things that we as Survivor fans are screaming for. And I feel like if Jeff could get behind, and if this big juggernaut of a machine that Survivor is can get behind the smaller franchises like Australia and South Africa and now the UK. And I know there's a lot that we probably don't mention right now because they're not English versions of the show. We could really, really create something, I think, that would be fun for fans to enjoy throughout the year. So I know it's difficult. I know we're fans. We're very passionate about it. Probably behind the scenes, there's a lot of licensing issues and things like that. But my plea to Jeff is, is that, listen, help this franchise out, because this franchise, Leroux Botha is the biggest fan of Jeff Probst and of what he's done with Survivor US. I don't know how he feels about the current state of it, but I know that everything that he does comes from a good place when it comes to Survivor South Africa.
You brought up the like world championship. Sorry if I said it wrong, for the challenge.
Yeah.
You literally have fans begging, like, let's have an international versus US version of the show. I mean, look, they can say they don't pay attention to the fans or whatever. I will say, when Jeff on the podcast last year says he doesn't take anything from other versions of Survivor, anything from other reality shows, I'm sorry, that's just a pretty dumb statement to say, because like there's so much you can work together to elevate the show. I will say, like, I've always looked at it as Survivor is my kind of sport. Like, you have these legendary names, you have legends of the game. You could literally, we talked about it earlier with, we started podcasting at the same time. We want to help each other grow. Survivor as a whole can help each other grow. Like, I would love to see people like Dino come over and play the US version of the game, because they're so different. You could take, we saw Sandra play Survivor Australia. Let's take Tony, a 2-time winner, send him over to South Africa to play Survivor South Africa and see how he does. There's so much you can do with this. You can create a bigger Survivor world and elevate the competition as a whole, to where we aren't talking about Sandra, the 2-time winner, or King George, someone who has almost won, twice and is very good at Australia. Say in 15, 20 years time, we can talk about how the legend of the game is Tony. Tony has 2 Survivor US wins. He has 1 Survivor South Africa win. He's got 2 Australia top 5s. Now, I don't know, we've seen people play that much. Boston Rob has played, 7 or 8 seasons up there?
Yeah.
Imagine if you have Survivor players, say, Carson. Carson is super young, 20 years old. Say, 20 years down the line, when he's in his 40s, this man played 8, 9 seasons of Survivor, but he played it throughout the world instead of just
So
US.
Again, you're talking about the challenge. And this is why I'm saying the challenge is killing Survivor right now, because the challenge brings back veterans that have played the game. The person who's won it the most is a guy called Johnny Bananas. He won 7 seasons. He's been on like 20 seasons of the show.
I didn't know it's been going on that long. What?
Yeah,
I thought like the
so
challenge.
he's got a photo of himself with the rings, like the 7 rings of what he's won. They're doing this. They're creating this big, bigger than life characters. And CT, who is like the Boston Rob of the challenge, is the second most successful player in the history of the show. He's got the Boston swag, the Boston accent, So they're just creating these players. And then you've got Cara Maria, who's like the poverty of it, where she's just a badass, or you could say Kim Spradling, at winning. She's won the show multiple times. She's great at winning daily challenges, and now they're bringing these people into the international global franchises, and they're creating a space for what you're just describing there. And I feel like somewhere down the line, Jeff has gotten into an echo chamber. I know it's not a Survivor US podcast, and he's locking everybody out because he feels like the best ideas is his own ideas. And the customer is always right. We're sometimes wrong because we can be demanding as fans. I will give him that.
But there's a few things.
We can be pretty demanding, but you got to pivot a little bit. But my biggest thing is, you've got a great franchise like Survivor South Africa that is on its knees right now. Potentially, we may not see the show again, even though people behind the scenes are telling me to calm it down, Chris. The show will be all right. Leroux Botha has brought it back before, after 5 years of not being on air in South Africa. He brought it back. I think this battle is a little bit different because Mnet itself, the channel that is currently the main channel that it shows on, I think is under pressure, because South Africa's got some really, really big economical issues. It's got very high immigration rates. I mean, I'm a testament to that. I've immigrated long ago, but there are way more people that are immigrating from South Africa right now. And the people that are leaving the country are the paying clients that pay for Mnet. So their subscriptions, I think, isn't where it used to be. And it's a country with 40% unemployment rate. So you're putting a very niche show behind a pay-to-view channel, which other Survivor franchises don't have that issue. In the US being on CBS and in Australia being on Channel 10, it can show to the mass audience. Survivor South Africa is behind a pay-to-view channel, and you've got all those unemployment figures and things like that over there. The youth unemployment figure is even worse, Randy. This is going to be shocking. It's 60% for people that leave school in South Africa. So it's got big problems in South Africa. To get people to watch this show is not the highest thing on people's mind, maybe, if they have to pay a high amount for the channel that it's on.
This is why I needed you here, because there were some things that like I didn't know. I had no idea it was on a paid channel or pay to watch channel. Basically, I was actually going to ask you, like, how big is Mnet in terms of like a channel for Survivor South Africa?
Yeah, I think, listen, and this is where it comes down to. I've dealt with people at Mnet, obviously similar to yourself, when we've done interviews and stuff like that. And those people, they know who they are. They're not public figures. I'm not mentioning their names, but shout out to them. Greatest people to work with.
Super nice. They are so
super
kind.
Nice. I've got so much respect and appreciation to Mnet as a channel for allowing us to do the interviews. And I don't want this to come across as ungrateful. But I don't think Mnet long-term is the right fit for Survivor South Africa because it is so niche, because it's a pay-to-view. It's like a satellite TV that you pay for with all these satellite networks that comes with it. And they really, really struggle, I think, to get this out to a global audience. The future for Survivor South Africa is global. It's not just Survivor South Africa alone, because Survivor is a global franchise. It's a global brand that is recognized around the world. So I do think that, sadly, you can't have Survivor South Africa on a free-to-air channel probably in South Africa because there are so many issues. But the best place for me where it probably should fit is Paramount Plus. If they're thinking of breaking into the South African market, there is your first really big show that is a tenth of the cost to create compared to the US show. So it's going to be very profitable. And if it's in the Paramount Plus brand, suddenly you can show it in Australia on Paramount Plus because they've got Paramount Plus. You can show it in the UK and you can show it in the US. So it just makes economical sense, business sense to put it on a platform that is global. If not Paramount Plus, I know they've got experience with Prime. They've had it on Amazon Prime in the UK before. And I do know that something like Netflix have already shown Survivor US seasons and brought a lot of new fans to the show that never even knew Survivor existed. So for me, you're a young guy, I pretend to be one. I'm like the Derek. I don't know if you watched Big Brother. I'm like Derek, from Big Brother. Trying to be younger than what I am. I try and keep up with the young kids. But, for me, I think that, if you look at the way that we sort of consume TV right now, it's all streaming, man. It's not
everything is
cable
streaming,
TV.
yes. I was going to say, I look really young right now. Like, I just shaved, so I probably look like I'm like 15 or something. I'm not that young. But no, you brought up like it would bring audiences to, the South African version of the show. That's something that I don't think Paramount or CBS or whoever, I don't think they're thinking about that. Like, this is a great way to grow the show in numbers, like even more. Survivor US has kind of been going downhill. And CBS has to know that. They see their own viewership ratings. And season 44 was an uptick a little bit, but I believe the other seasons were down maybe a little bit. And so
44 is an uptick, and then they remove it from Paramount Plus. What's going on there, Randy?
It's I don't know. There's so many decisions that Jeff and CBS make absolutely no sense. From a marketing side of things, you might have people in Survivor South Africa and Australia or UK or whatever. They're like, the show's not what it used to be. I'm not really going to watch. You take a popular figure. She's popular to me, like Marianne. Take Marianne and put her on the US version of the show. Now you have people who gave up on the US version of the show from, South Africa who are going to watch on Paramount Plus just because they want to see Marianne play again, or just because they want to see Dino. I know I keep bringing him up.
Marianne would absolutely kill it in the South African version of the show. I reckon she would do so well.
She would be so good. Yes. So like it's a way to increase numbers. Like, I don't know.
And I feel like she would play. I mean, I feel like Marianne's that big of a fan where she probably would play. And then obviously I know she's Canadian, but she's got African roots, like going back to an African franchise to help build it. Like, I feel like that's a sell that it's easy to do. Like, you don't even need to be a good salesperson to get it on.
And you have people like Rick Devens, who people are like begging to come on and play again, who maybe it doesn't line up. The schedule doesn't line up with the US version of the
Rick
show. They're not.
Devens
Yes,
and
Rick Devens.
Adam, both really good friends with Leroy Butter. Both very good friends. So
Are they
I've
really?
got yes. So I've got no doubt that, like, listen, and this is the other thing. We spoke about the World Championship right there.
Yes.
Australia may give it to us, but do we want Australia to have the responsibility of doing that season? I'm going to play devil's advocate here because Australia, I know a lot of people, a lot of fans are like, Australian Survivor is the bee's knees. It is the best thing
It's my
since sliced
favorite.
cheese.
I will say it's my
and
favorite.
it is good. It is good. Listen, I don't want to hate on it because, who knows? I may apply for it now that I'm moving to
You
Australia.
better. I better see you out there, Chris. You better.
Yeah, but the one pet peeve that I have with Australian Survivor is the editing department, their storytelling. I really hate that they only focus on 4 players every season and that we don't get to see anything from anybody else. So for me, from that perspective, I don't want them to do World Championship because when Tony Vlachos comes to play again, if he's okay, they'll never be able to under-edit him. Who's a good example? Let's say a great player comes back like Rick Devens or Adam, and they don't do well.
Michelle would get underrated. She would be, she wouldn't be shown like whatsoever.
Exactly. So that's why I wouldn't want World Championship to be on Australia. I think that the place where it fits better is on Leroy Butta's show. I feel like he would do it justice. He would give everybody the time in the sun. And this is the thing that I love about Survivor South Africa. You mentioned that Survivor South Africa, everything's got its own distinct sort of flavor to it when it comes to these different franchises. And there's something to appreciate in each one of them, even Survivor US. Like, I'm still a glass half full kind of guy, even though I know I've been bagging on it a little bit earlier here.
You should.
Yeah. I feel like it's my duty. But, looking at Survivor South Africa, what they do better than anybody else is storytelling. They give us the full explanation for how a plan comes together and why somebody is getting blindsided. It reminds me of why I enjoyed watching Big Brother back in the day when it was at its peak, because you could see people putting a plan together. You knew the blindside was coming and you were in on it, where you get other shows like the US or Australia, sometimes they try and blindside you at the vote to get that shock and awe factor, which I know a lot of people like as well. But for me, someone a student of the game, someone that wants to learn, how do you interact in certain social circumstances when you're under pressure? I feel like there's more to be learned from watching Survivor South Africa because they show you the skill of the player. Or if the player is lucky getting to the end or they're not the greatest player, they're not going to hide that. They're going to show us maybe this player got a little bit lucky on their way to winning it. And I can say this because, I've watched more than Return of the Outcast, which I know you still have to go back and do some of your earlier season watches on that. But there are some phenomenal seasons out there. There are some shocking outcomes there where you're like, how did this happen? And they show you everything. They don't hide it on the screen. So that's really why I feel so passionately about Survivor South Africa as a franchise. That's why I feel so passionately that we need to revive this show. And also why I want Leroux to do the World Championship season, because I feel like everybody, like the Ethan vote would never have gone down like it did on Leroux's show. We would have understood the vote a lot better.
I will say this. I mean, maybe it's at this point in the video, maybe it's like, Randy, you're looking way too far into it. But it would kind of refresh Survivor as a whole, because one of the biggest complaints for example, is all we do now, the only place we go to is Fiji. It's always on Fiji, and that's boring. If you are having, like, say they all go on to Paramount Plus, you're having 5-6 seasons of Survivor a year, that's going to refresh it for the fans, because Survivor South Africa doesn't film in Fiji, or at least they didn't last season. Survivor Australia was in not Borneo. Oh my God. Samoa.
Samoa. Yep.
Yes. Samoa. Pardon me. So like it keeps it refreshing for the fans. And you could even do something cool if you did, like, say you did it like a World Cup. Again, this is Randy. You're getting way too far into it. Say you do a World Championship every 4 years, different. Maybe you have a few that have already done one come back to try to win it. This would be like the ultimate Survivor crown. Make it the biggest reward possible. Give them a beautiful trophy. Do something, right? You have the biggest cast. Have like 24 people, right? Make this like a World Cup. Every 4 years, you have this Survivor World Championship, this giant game. And maybe it can rotate, right? I don't know. Maybe you start with US host the first season or whatever, or maybe Australia or South Africa. But whoever wins, let's just say we've been bringing up his name a lot. We love Dino. We have the same buff right now. Dino sent me this buff. Thank you, Dino. But I'll use Dino as example again. He comes on. U.S. is hosting the show. They are hosting the World Championship. Dino wins. All right, now hosting duties go to South Africa. So they get the majority of the revenue because they're hosting it. They're putting it together, yada, yada. Not only does it help the community learn more about South African culture, because maybe some of the rewards are about, some of the foods they have out there that we don't have in the U.S., it helps the country out. They do the same thing with Eurovision, where the country hosts Eurovision based off whoever wins the previous one. It helps, the country out. It helps television ratings for that country. So this could be something, if they really tried, that could go even bigger. I don't know if you have anything to add on to that. I know it's like, Randy, you're speaking crazy now. But I think
you're
speaking a lot of potential.
You're speaking my language, because that's what the challenge is doing. Like, again, is why I'm loving the challenge. It's like the challenge is doing everything right now. And I know it's not a challenge podcast. By the way, if you want to listen to challenge reviews, come and check out my channel on the Nullified Take channel.
Link will be in the description below.
Yeah, shameless plug there. But listen, the challenge is doing a lot of that stuff. And what I'm thinking with this whole thing is that Jeff Probst is not going to live forever. He's not going to be there forever. And my fear, once again, is, Jeff, what are you doing? Like, we, the fans, don't want season 50 to be the last season. And I'm getting feelings like my spidey senses are going off that he's not thinking beyond that right now. And that maybe 50 will be this next big returnee season, because he's just pumping out a bunch of new players at the moment. And we're not getting any of this, recurring players. Like, there's so many great legends in the making, like Dom, Rick Devens. Those players have never come back. Angela,
Todd Herzog from China.
So many. Christian. Like, I mean, you can name them. You could easily come up with 2 seasons worth of second chances to come out and play the game right now, which he's not brought back. But my problem is that he's getting older, and at some point he's not going to want to go to Fiji anymore. And a lot of the decisions that he's making right now is for his own leisure. Like, going to Fiji every year is easy. He doesn't have to go out of his comfort zone of getting a new camp. Maybe he doesn't know how things work there, because he's getting older. Like, as you get older, you don't want to consistently.
You want to settle down.
You want to settle down. We're seeing Survivor South Africa is the young kid on the block that's like, no, we're going to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. So
are you talking Nico?
Oh, yeah. Nico. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Nico. I love Nico, man, but I'm also a big JLP fan. Plus, I love the new guy that's coming in for Survivor UK. I forgot his name now.
Joel Dommett.
Yeah, Joel Dommett. That's how it's pronounced.
Yeah,
I asked Bandit Survivor. Yeah. So Joel, he's 37 years old. He's the age that Jeff was when he started. We need that level of young blood coming in, but not just in the sense of the host himself, but in the level of ideas, innovation. Survivor South Africa doing Return of the Outcasts was, again, a testament to why Survivor South Africa is so creative, because they took a theme that has never been used before, where Australian Survivors like, we'll just grab heroes versus villains because we know that will bring eyeballs. It's an easy win. Survivor South Africa is like, let's go out on a limb. Let's try something different. Let's get pre-mergers versus post-mergers. And it ended up being a slam dunk idea, So this is what I'm trying to say. Like, we need innovation. We need the young blood to come in and push this franchise beyond. Like, the main franchise can continue on, but Jeff needs to start, in my opinion, thinking about what's Survivor like without him, and building these other franchises up, truly getting a global brand together. Or if South Africa is dumb enough to let Lirubutta and them go with Afrikaans and not bring this back, bring those guys in immediately to the main show. Bring those guys into Australia.
Sign them on. Yeah.
Give them a global franchise. Even call it Survivor Global or something. And Paramount Plus, there is nothing that prevents them from having an extra show. Like, we've got on the challenge now, we've got MTV Challenge, which is the main show, which is season 38 is coming out pretty soon. So it's been on for a long time. But we've also now got Paramount versions of the show, which is the Challenge USA. We've got the Challenge All-Star seasons on Paramount Plus the global shows, while the main show is still going. If Challenge fans can stick to so many different seasons and watch it, why can't Survivor fans do it? We're way more passionate and crazy than Challenge fans.
Yeah, I mean, Well said. And I mean, I also share the same fears. Like, I am terrified that once season 50 comes around, Jeff says, we're going to have this mega season. We're going to go out with a bang, and this is going to be the end of the show because it's the end of me hosting. And I'm terrified of that. I know there's been some rumors of, maybe Colby coming on and becoming the host. I personally don't see that happening, but, it's terrifying because it is coming to an
Colby's
end.
out. I love Colby, by the way. Like, people are like, why do you like Colby? Well, you got to understand, when I watched Colby, I was like 11 years old, and
So
he was this cowboy hero.
he was an enigma. Yeah.
Exactly. I was like, oh, I want to be like Colby when I grow up, kind of thing. And I still like Colby, but Colby doesn't get the strategy of where Survivor is today. And
Mhm.
I don't think it would be a good fit. Boston Rob, I don't think would be a good fit.
I would hate
like
Boston Rob hosting. Like, I like him, but I would hate him hosting.
My brain would hurt just trying to understand everything he says all the time, like with that thick Boston accent. I just don't think, like, you need some of a more neutral accent. Plus, I'd prefer for it to be someone that potentially has not played the game before and comes in with a fresh mindset to the whole thing. But again, if we had to have a player, then give the man his flowers. Give it to like a Rob C, at least for a couple of seasons or something. The guy's done more for the community than anybody else. Like, I'd put my backing behind him. I mean, you and I probably wouldn't do podcasting if it wasn't for him, because he gave people the idea that podcasting is something that we could do. We could have our opinions and our voice out there. And he's well connected, and I don't think we'll see him play ever again. So if he's not going to play, maybe bring him back in for a few seasons. The only thing that counts against Rob is the fact that he's also, I guess he's in maybe like in his early 40s. He could still
I think it's early 40s. Yeah, he could be there first,
yeah.
and I think he would bring some excellent ideas, and he kind of would turn the show back to what he's used to. The last thing I'll say on Jeff Probst is he's also like lost connection to the audience. Like, he is so far away from knowing what fans actually want, because he keeps pushing out these ideas, and he's like, I know it's gonna work. I know the fans are gonna love this.
Just come on board.
Year after year, we try to tell him, Jeff.
Yeah.
Like, he literally, and he has to know this because he made a segment called "Why Jeff Sucks." Like, he knows fans have a problem, and it's like he's just ignoring it. But before we kind of wrap up here, I do want to go ahead and talk about like the rumor about why this was shut down. I have a quick little statement here. So Survivor South Africa's last season suffered as linear TV ratings dropped to 43% with its debut. Coupled with a disastrous move to a much earlier time slot of 1800, as well as the stacking of 4 episodes per week, which made it difficult for DSTV subscribers to keep up, as viewer fatigue and a lack of time to discuss the episodes set in. And then this quote came directly from Mnet. There's currently no local version of Survivor SA on the Mnet content planned. I mean, Chris, from your knowledge, and I know there are some things you might know that you can't say here, how much of that is true? And is there some bigger things going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think personally, I spoke about this a few days ago, even on my channel. I know for a fact there is more to this than just the ratings drop, and also the fact that they never really make the ratings publicly available to anyone. They never told Leroux Botha what the ratings were. It seems like it's being used as a little bit of a scapegoat to not renew it. They've also dropped, from my knowledge, and I can't confirm or deny who's telling me this stuff, but from my knowledge, they've also dropped other international franchises that they had, so other big US reality TV franchises. So Survivor South Africa is not the only one. So when you look at that, there is a common denominator being the channel Mnet itself. MultiChoice, a couple of months ago, went through a massive restructure. They've got a new CEO. The previous CEO was let go. MultiChoice owns Mnet, I should say, and all of the channels under it, and they are struggling financially. And performance-wise, they had a change. There's a new guy coming in. He hasn't started officially yet. I think in the coming months he's going to take over. But because of that, there is a new direction. There is a focus on cost saving wherever they can. And like I mentioned, with all of the other stuff that's going on in South Africa, a lot of people being unemployed, some people leaving the country that maybe could afford to pay for these things. I think there is a lot more at play than simply Survivor South Africa as a franchise is struggling or the viewership isn't there. And also wanted to add that they blamed on the article on News 24, which is where the news first broke. They blamed the 4 episodes a week as one of the reasons maybe why ratings weren't as high. I wasn't a big fan of the 4 episodes per week.
I wasn't either. It was a lot.
Yeah, and again, when I spoke to Leroux really liked producing it that way because he thought it was closer to streaming where people can watch all of it together. And I looked at it from a podcaster's lens where it's not fun to talk about, like even Australian Survivor kills you when you talk about 3 episodes at a time, right? And we want to marinate on stuff. We want to be like, oh, wow, Chappie's just got blindsided this week. What's going to happen next? And talk about it for the whole week. That's more fun for me. And that's kind of how I'm used to consuming Survivor as content and sort of talking about it. But the 4 episodes a week thing was not LaRue's idea. The Mnet channel forced them to do that to fit into their schedule. So, and there's more I can say about that I can't really go into. But, the 4 episodes thing was, again, a bit of a cop-out to say, hey, this didn't really work when they're the ones who planned for it to be 4 episodes.
It's just, the 4 episodes, I mean, from a podcaster's side of things, Chris, I'm sure it's a lot. It's very difficult. Like, love Survivor. South Africa is amazing to me, but Australia is my favorite, and they do that kind of 3-4 episode format, as everyone knows. And that's the one thing about it I don't like. It's so much to cover. And like you said, it's nice to marinate on things. And I just feel like you have to go back and almost rewatch it to really understand everything, because you're going from one episode to the next episode. And especially when you're podcasting as well, you're talking to some castaways here and there. It becomes a lot. Okay, we got to put this out there, and the link will be in the description. Chris, we are really trying to bring South Africa back and give it the boost it needs to be revived or put on a different channel. Tell the fans what you got going on. I know I've already signed it, but tell us about this petition that you put on and what made you do this.
Yeah, listen, firstly, thank you for signing it. I saw a lot of people online that were very devastated when the news came out that Survivor South Africa is gone, because, like you rightfully said, this is something that a lot of fans look at as a love letter to old school Survivor. And the fact that Leroux Botha and Dino and the players are the most friendly and accessible people that you can ever get in the fandom is a bonus to it. Because if you look at a lot of the other franchises, people become bigger than the fans. They don't listen to the fans or even engage. And not that anybody owes the fans anything, but these Survivor South African people, they're really, really engaged with us, the fandom, and they're trying to put a product there. They're really listening and trying to put a product out there that all of us can love and support. Now, seeing the devastation out there on people's faces and the responses that we got on this thing being cancelled, my whole life I've been a doer more than somebody that sits back and let things happen. So immediately I just thought, let's get a petition out there. Let's show the people that are fighting behind the scenes, because right now I can say that things are moving, but they're moving very, very slowly in the right direction. So there are hope for people out there that love this franchise. There's going to be nothing better for Leroux Botha to have a look at this petition and say, wow, we've got 10,000 people behind me that signed this petition, or even more than that. Dare we dream, 50,000 people. We know there's that many people out there that watch it that are behind me for trying to get this thing back. It'll just give him the fuel that he needs to get up in the morning and keep pushing to get this thing back on our screens. So what I did with the petition is I put it out there. I said, listen, we're the fans. We want to get this thing back out there, but we want it on a global streaming platform. Give it to the masses. Let's make it accessible for people all around the world to watch in a legal manner. I've had people comment that the petition is not going to make a difference, all that kind of things. I can tell you, if you're 50-50 about it, wouldn't you rather sign this thing and it comes back than not sign it? And
it takes no time.
No effort.
It takes no time. Get on, sign the petition.
Get involved.
It's going to be in the link in the link's going to be in the description below. It will also be on our website, survivornowpodcast.com. I will put it there. You can find it there. I mean, there's hope. There has to be hope.
Yeah.
Even like one, you said it's moving in the right direction. That is incredible to hear. Like Chris hadn't told me that yet. Like that, there was a small smile that came across my face.
Yeah.
That is amazing to hear. And I mean, like, there is hope. We saw kind of something happen with Survivor UK, where it happened for a couple seasons, got canceled. And after years, we are getting it back. And we saw South Africa got canceled, and then it came back. Survivor Australia got canceled, and it came back. This has happened before. It is scary. We all want it back. But don't think there's no hope. If you want to help the cause, sign the petition. If you want it to happen in a fast manner, because just think, if you're in that position of, you're trying, sorry, I'm going to say his name wrong, but Chris, help me out here.
Leroux,
yes. Leroux, if you're in Leroux's position, right, he wants to fight for this because we all know he loves it. And if
Yeah.
you don't know that, go to his Twitter page. Like, is it still up? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
it's still up.
Yeah. Go to his Twitter page and you'll see how much he loves it. Put yourself in that position. If you see a petition that's been made and it has, a couple hundred, you're going to be like, "Oh, this is nice." If it has a couple thousand, those voices are heard. So sign this petition and it's just going to help him, like you said, Chris, get the drive that he needs to really push to bring this back. I mean, Chris, in
And how
the
you
end,
know, I just want to say how you know
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
Leru Buta is like fully behind this petition, as well as he actually retweeted the petition on his profile. So if you want to go follow Leru, it's at Leru Buta, LEROUXBOTHA, at Leru Buta, and I can give you the link to that as well. You probably have it. We can
Yes.
put it in the description below as well.
Mhm.
The guy deserves, like, I always feel guilty because we give all the praise to Lurubuta when the whole Afrikaans team is awesome, but he is the face of the franchise. Like, he's the one that openly pushes this thing ahead. Him and everybody at Afrikaans, they're all amazing people. They're all massive fans of the show. Don't be someone that is sorry. Be someone that gets involved. That's what I'd leave you with.
That I can't say anything else. That was like amazing. But I mean, Chris, I can't thank you enough for coming on. This meant so much to me to have you. I know, like, I listen to your show. I know you love Survivor South Africa. You're from South Africa. That's why I wanted you here to you're such an expert when it comes to it. And I know you might know some things about this that I didn't know. And I can't thank you enough. Again, this has been a work in progress, like getting us together.
We're going to do it again.
I've been so excited. I just wish it was on better terms.
100%. We'll meet on better terms in the future, and I had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for inviting me, and for everybody listening to this. Let's it's hashtag when not if. That's what I'll leave you with.
That's amazing. And check Chris out on the Nullified Take. Check out all his content. The link will be in the description below. And again, thank you guys. Sign the petition and let's get Survivor South Africa back on our screens.